With about 2 months to go until election day and every swing state needing to be hard fought, this thing is going to come down to just a couple of maybe 10,000 votes. To hear that your candidate is effectively pulling out of those one swing states, that's probably not what you want to hear at this point. And yet, according to a top Trump volunteer, New Hampshire, they're done with it. It was supposed to be a swing state. The polling looked pretty competitive, but I guess they're done, at least according to the volunteer, who's also a former Republican Party official. So they sent an email to GOP volunteers in Massachusetts that ended up getting leaked. This is Tom Mountain, which sounds made up, but I guess it's a real name. So former Republican Party vice chair in Massachusetts sent an email to volunteers claiming that, quote, the campaign has determined that New Hampshire is no longer a battleground state. So Mountain advised supporters to turn their attention instead to Pennsylvania, as Trump was, quote, sure to lose by an even higher margin in New Hampshire than he did in 2016 and 2020. And so I have thoughts, but let me go to a little bit more of his statement. It says, so for those who were active in the NH ground campaign in 2016 and 2020 and expected to do the same after Labor Day, the simple question is, what are we to do? Go to Pennsylvania, the nearest battleground state. This is a must-win state. If we lose Pennsylvania, we lose the election. And Mountain claimed that the Trump campaign would be pulling resources out of the state and would not be sending Trump or any high-profile campaign surrogates, such as his sons, to the state. And we're going to return to that in just a second. But look, Tom Mountain is in the middle of a world of hurt right now, and that will probably continue because whether this is true or not, and there's reason to believe it's true, the Trump campaign definitely doesn't want to be presenting weakness. I mean, they do constantly. JD Vance's every statement out of his mouth, every bodily motion is weak, and Trump's almost complete lack of campaigning is very weak. But they don't want to admit that the result of all of this is that they're not as competitive as they said they are. And yet, Mountain makes some pretty good points right there. They did lose in 2016 and in 2020. And so is it the best use of resources to the extent that resources are even being used there? Because as he points out, you shouldn't expect big surrogates to be sent, which is the sort of thing you do when you think you can win a state. No major Trump surrogate has been to the state since April, and we're kind of straining the definition major because that was Doug Burgum at that point. Donald Trump hasn't gone there. No Don Jr. They haven't had Laura Trump, belt out a few tunes or anything. They've pretty much given up on it. I mean, there's some campaigning and they have been doing some stuff with volunteers, but not direct focus, an indication that you think that the state is actually in play.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
Now, as I said, there are consequences for this, not just electorally, consequences for Mountain. Mountain was asked to step away from the Trump campaign and will no longer have any involvement. Mountain committed the fatal mistake of telling the truth, I guess. And here's the thing, to the truth, Harris has held a reasonably strong and consistent lead over Trump in the little polling that's available. So we do have to admit that there is not a lot of polling, but in the polls that we have, she's got in the one case there, this is with RFK Jr. back in July at 4%. She's up by 6. And then in August, the poll that we have, she's up by 7. I mean, look, it is not a 6-7 point lead, with not a lot of polling. This isn't like an aggregation of a lot of polls. That's not like a guarantee of like victory. So he could make a play, but it doesn't seem like they're going to. And Mountain is right about Pennsylvania. If they lose Pennsylvania, if they lose Georgia, it is difficult to figure out a map that makes sense that would actually have him win. And so I guess maybe it does make sense, especially as they're lagging in fundraising and in campaigning to turn in that direction. But I do want to end with the update to this story because we were already going to do this story, but I want to give you Donald Trump's cover. So there's all these headlines all over the place of like the Trump campaign is giving up on New Hampshire. And again, go Trump. If you're not giving up, go do some rallies, spend a day or two in New Hampshire. You're not going to do it, are you? So he put out this statement on Truth Social saying, Comrade Kamala Harris sees there are problems for her campaign in New Hampshire because of the fact that they disrespected it in their primary and never showed up. Additionally, the cost of living in New Hampshire is through the roof. Their energy bills are some of the highest in the country, and their housing market is the most unaffordable in history. I protect blah, 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 something about the primary to my friends in New Hampshire. Get out and vote Trump. Together, we will make your state and America strong, safe, and prosperous again. So Look at the projection and weird, bizarro world inversion of reality. So we have a news cycle where a sort of like campaign official is like, look, if you're a volunteer, don't waste your time because they're not going to. They're not going there. Trump's not going to go there. Let's actually go to a state where we can win. And so that looks really bad for Donald Trump. That's the headline about New Hampshire and this election. There's nothing about Harris. There's nothing. It's Trump is in trouble. And so he puts out, she sees that there are problems for a campaign in New Hampshire. What are you talking about? She's leading by 6 or 7 points. You're the dude who isn't putting the resources in when you should. And when he goes and says to my friends in New Hampshire, get out and vote Trump, why don't you go to your friends in New Hampshire and tell them to vote Trump? If it's so important to you, and if you're not retreating, why not just do that? But he's not going to. And so anyway, Tom Mountain might be done with the campaign, might even be done as a Republican after this, but I think he was able to fit in a little bit of truth. And in a campaign where we are desperate to find out what's really going on, I think it's a super useful thing. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.